Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Healthy. Hello, Sam. What's going on, everybody? Just give me a second. I am working on some stuff in the background. We had some technical issues before the show got started today. My computer, for those of you who are Windows users, my computer blue screened about 15 minutes before we started the show today. So I ran some stuff in the background. I'm a little worried that it might do it again. So don't know just yet what we've got going on here. So I'm working on some stuff in the background, sending out tweets, getting everything kind of organized. So just give me a second, and we will get the show on the road here shortly. Sam, that's exactly what I did. It turned itself off and then turned it back on. Okay, we are ready to go. Everything's been tweeted. I've got a list up ready to go. We've got some topics. Obviously, whatever you guys want to talk about, throw in the chat as well. I do need to warn everybody. Because I'm gonna go to the big screen here, and it's gonna look a little chaotic behind me because I can see it in the preview window right now. It's a little crazy over here. I'm in the process of moving, and this is the last room that needs to be deconstructed, and so I'm in the process of deconstructing it here because I'm moving a lot of the stuff this weekend. So just hold all your criticisms, hold all your complaints, just leave your critiques at the door, okay? I know it's a mess behind me. I understand that, but I was not going to not do the Friday edition of the show. So we've gone to the big screen. You can now see the craziness behind me. You can see that this is gone. The TV that was over here is gone. A lot of stuff not in this room anymore as we break all this down. And a new look coming to you the next time I more than likely do this show, because I don't think I'll be doing the Monday show from here. I don't think, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see ultimately how it all pans out. Tuttle says moving sucks so much, no judgments here. It's not that it's pretty easy. It's not that difficult. I don't have a lot of stuff. It's just this room in particular is hard to take down in chunks because this room, this office, it's where I work every single day, and the background's very important. So like the lights have stayed up even though I should probably take them down. Sam asks, how often do you move? I would say I've moved once a year for the last 5 years or so. My lease is over, so I'm moving into a new place. So you move move every year. I think I moved around this time last year into this place. So okay, so we've got a fun show today. Joe Burrow's contracts, comments on Joe Burrow's next contract, him talking about wanting other people to get paid and thinking about other people in the process, something we want to discuss. Sam asked me in the Discord to look at returning quarterbacks, and so I have a list from NFL Mock Draft database of all the quarterbacks that are playing next year, are going to be back. So we've got that we can go through as well. There's just a lot of great names all across the board, and whatever else. I implore you to use this opportunity right now before I push the button that says record and start the show to throw in whatever topics you would like us to discuss here on the show today. This is the show where we completely pass it off to you guys, and you guys determine what we talk about on the show. So we're going to get started here in a second, so I'm making this that kind of call for topics, for what you would like to hear, my thoughts on it, what you'd like to have a discussion on here on the show today. Well, you guys are probably typing those things out and getting those things ready to go. I am going to push the record button and get this show on the road. And welcome in to the Friday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you here once again on the show, the Friday Free-For-All, the show where we pass the producer's role. The producer's microphone gets thrown virtually across the screen. It is no longer sitting in front of me. It is sitting in front of you guys, the listeners of the show, the live YouTube chat, the TDN Premium Discord. You guys give me the topics that you want to hear discussed on the show today, and we've already got a couple that have worked their way into the show, and I'm sure as the show progresses on, there will be more and more things to discuss. All the more reason for you to come and join us on the YouTube side of things, or join us over on the TDN Premium Discord and sign up for TDN Premium. You can be a part of all the premium content that we have in the Discord. You can be a part of stuff like this where you give your topics for the show, all of the stuff that is included with TDN Premium, a cheap plug there for the TDN Premium service. But yes, the show gets handed over to you. We close out the week in style with the listeners taking over the show. So appreciate all of you being here, listening in the podcast feed, being in the live YouTube chat. Appreciate you ending the week here with me. Had a fun week here on the show, and we're going to close it out in style. And in the pre-show, I was telling the YouTube audience that the background a little bit on the video version, a little bit messed up. I'm moving, so deconstructing the office has slowly taken part over the last couple of days, and so a little chaotic back here, but you can catch that on the YouTube side of things. So we've got Joe Burrow's next contract as part of the topic. He's the thumbnail for today's show. Sam Teets asked me in the TDN Premium Discord, hey Chris, we got a lot of returning quarterbacks in college. You think we can go through a list, kind of set the landscape a little bit of what the summer is going to look like from a scouting perspective, and how much returning productivity there is in college football at the quarterback position? I said, sure, it's your guys' show. I'll write it down. And Sportsnut, while I was doing the intro to the show, has asked the question about which team will have a better record next year, the Jets or the Giants. That is just where we start the show. Those are the three topics that we are starting the show with, and who knows what else we can get to throughout the course of the next half hour or so that we will be doing this podcast. I do want to start, though, with Joe Burrow's contract negotiations and the comments that I'm pretty sure they came from him, that he made about thinking of other people during his contract negotiation. And that felt like a very, very clear indication that, Joe Burrow in this process is thinking about the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals have three very good wide receivers that they need to consider paying here at some point. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, all players, all wide receivers for this team whose contracts are coming up relatively soon and are going to get more money on their next deal than they are currently being paid by the Cincinnati Bengals. And so when you look at these comments and you look at Joe Burrow talking about how, thinking about other people, T. Higgins has responded and said it means a lot that Joe Burrow is looking out for others in contract talks. And I don't want to completely throw cold water on this, but I don't think Joe Burrow is going to take a pay cut in order for the Cincinnati Bengals to be able to pay T. Higgins, to pay Tyler Boyd, to pay Jamar Chase. Now, he might be able to play ball with the cap number, and the Bengals might be able to present him with a contract structure and a setup where it is advantageous for the Bengals from a cap perspective so that they can go ahead and do this. But Joe Burrow is not going to leave millions of dollars on the table so that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to be able to get paid. That's just not how this works. Agencies don't work that way. The position hasn't worked that way in forever, right? I mean, even when Tom Brady was quote-unquote taking a pay cut, right, and not taking as much money as some of the other quarterbacks, he wasn't doing it in the environment that we see now, where quarterbacks are always trying to one-up each other. And not in a egotistical way, but they are always using the way the market is currently set to then reset the market, right? That's the way free agency and contract extensions have been working for the last 5 to 7 years, pretty regularly. It's kind of been the way things have worked. So Joe Burrow is not going to slot in below Jalen Hurts. He's not going to slot in below Lamar Jackson. He's going to get more than those two contracts, right? And so to me, that is the cold water that I kind of want to throw on this. That he can be thinking about T. Higgins. He can be thinking about Jamar Chase. He can be thinking about the best way for Joe Burrow to get the most amount of money that he can, while also structuring in his contract in a way that allows the Bengals to operate and add other players. The Chiefs did this with Patrick Mahomes. The contract that Patrick Mahomes got from the Kansas City Chiefs is bonkers. It's ludicrous. It's what, 10 years, $450 million, $500 million, whatever he got. But the length of the deal and the money on the deal and the way that the cap is structured on the deal is spread out in a way to where when the big cap numbers hit, that's probably when the Chiefs and Mahomes will re-come to the bargaining table and they will restructure this deal, lower those cap hits again, and then move the money out even further. But right now, they're in a window where the cap number on Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the game, is lower in comparison to what you think it should be for Patrick Mahomes, and that allows the Chiefs to operate in free agency, allows them to sign their draft class. It also allows them to do extensions, all that stuff. Sportsnut points out in the chat, they also traded away Tyreek Hill, which also helped. Yes, it's not just a one-factor thing here, but when we look at this, I find it hard to believe that Joe Burrow's contract is not going to come in above what contracts came in this offseason. Now, maybe it's structured in a way that's going to be able to help T. Higgins. Maybe it's going to be structured in a way that's going to be able to help Jamar Chase. And those two guys are probably the two more likely of the three wide receivers to get contract extensions from the Cincinnati Bengals. But to me, I don't think we're going to see a headline where Joe Burrow takes less than the contracts that were given out this offseason to Jalen Hurts, to Lamar Jackson. I just don't see that happening. And the Bengals have to get that done first, and then you can work on T. Higgins. You can work on Jamar Chase next year when he's eligible. And that's the order of operations that this needs to go in. So I don't want to throw complete cold water on it because it is nice to see and it's nice to hear that Joe Burrow is understanding that the best way for him to succeed as a football player and to be able to win a championship is he's got to have people around him, and exploring ways that he can structure his contract in a way to be able to do that is a very noble cause. But again, I would just caution against the idea of that meaning that he's going to take less than what we've seen from this offseason. Now, the other major topic that we want to talk about here on the show today, and Sam Teets, you're in the chat, hopefully. But you asked me, and I'm going to read it verbatim from the TDN Premium Discord, because I wrote in there, I said, folks, we are 10 minutes away from the show. What would you like me to focus on today? And Sam Teets said, there are a lot of quarterbacks returning to college this year. I don't know how comfortable you feel talking about them, but maybe we could scan the lay of the land. And I will tell you, my summer scouting has been a little bit delayed. A little rain delay here because of the moving. I haven't been able to deep dive into these quarterbacks, but I have a schedule for myself when I'm going to start deep diving. So I have not started the deep dive into these guys for 2024. But I think it is very reasonable for us to sit here on this show today because it is going to be a topic of conversation on TDN Daily throughout the summer. I'm hopefully going to be doing pretty regular updates to my top 5 or top 10 at multiple positions, I would assume, throughout the course of this scouting process. I don't want to overwork myself here, going from being the role that I've had here at TDN, being a producer, kind of being a third voice on things, to now being more of a host, doing a lot of different things. I want to put my opinion out there. I want to scout these guys. I want to have my thoughts on these players, more so than I've had in years past, but I also don't want to say, yes, I'm going to watch 350, 400 players. It's a bit of a jump. So we're going to try to have pretty regular updates to top 10 at certain positions. Quarterback, definitely going to be one of them. I am going to have a top 10 quarterback list ahead of the 2024 draft cycle before the season begins. I will tell you where I see these guys for me. But I think, importantly, for this lay of the land, we can just throw names out there. We can just throw names out there of guys that I'm very excited to watch, guys that I'm very excited to be keeping an eye on here, and it's going to be a long list. You're going to hear me read a lot of names, but that's because this is a very, very good draft class, and I think we'll put them in buckets, right? We'll start with the two at the top that I think everybody is talking about right now as the favorites, co-favorites, however you want to view them, the top tier of quarterbacks for 2024. That's Caleb Williams and Drake May. Caleb Williams, Heisman winner. Caleb Williams, great year at USC. Almost had them competing for a college football playoff spot. Lincoln Riley, we know all the buzz that is surrounding USC for this season. And that's going to continue with Caleb Williams being draft eligible. Drake May, North Carolina, the other player in this bucket that is giving Caleb Williams a run for his money. And then I think after that, there's a lot of, you can put these into multiple different buckets. You can have 15 different buckets. You can have 4 different buckets, however you want to see it. But I look at, after this, I look at guys like Michael Penix Jr. in Washington, Bo Nix, who returned to Oregon, Jordan Travis at Florida State, Quinn Ewers at Texas. These are just some of the names that I think are in that next tier that I would be looking at. I'm very excited to watch Cameron Ward this season. Everybody who's a regular listener of TDN Daily, one of the first episodes I did, it was probably, I think, in the first 10 or 15 episodes, was me talking about how excited I was for Cam Ward. He could have come out in the draft last year, decided to go back to school, and I think you're going to see the growth from him this season. Jalen Daniels from Kansas. I'm interested in watching guys that had to go someplace else and are looking for success, right? Spencer Rattler at South Carolina, DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State. I'm just reading a list here. I'm going to be interested in watching Cameron Rising. I'm going to be interested in watching Grayson McCall. Now, do I think these guys are first-round quarterbacks? No, I don't think any of the guys I just mentioned there were, but I'm excited to see them to set a base for us all of where these players are and see where they grow throughout the course of the process. You got Jackson Dart that I'll be keeping an eye on at Ole Miss. You've got Jeremy Musa at Florida A&M. I mean, the list goes on and on of players that you're going to be keeping an eye on. J.J. McCarthy, Shadir Sanders, K.J. Jefferson, Tyler Van Dyke, Joe Milton, Michael Pratt at Tulane, Jaden Daniels at LSU. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I don't even think I mentioned Devin Leary, Riley Leonard, Kyle McCord. What Alabama does with their quarterback room is going to be Jalen Milroe starting for them. I mean, there are quarterbacks that are going to be playing at very good levels that we are going to be looking at through the draft lens that are on this list. Sam mentions a lot of veteran transfers. I mentioned Devin Leary, Sam Hartman, Jeff Sims, Brendan Armstrong, Phil Jerkovich. I mean, there are so many names that I think, Dylan Gabriel, Tanner Mordecai. I mean, you just got all of these different names that you're going to be keeping an eye on. And so at some point throughout this process, a tier is going to emerge. And I have a feeling that, Caleb Williams and Drake May are going to be at the top of that bucket, and then the rest of those 8 names in my top 10 list will file in some order after that. But I am very much looking forward to watching these quarterbacks this season because it is a good group. I think there are a lot of quarterbacks who play the position very differently, and it should be a lot of fun to see where this group starts this process. Right, and the process is always ongoing, right? But when we start looking at Caleb Williams and Drake May and Quinn Ewers, we are looking at them now with a draft lens because they are now draft eligible. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it to start deep diving. And Caleb Williams is the first player on the list that I plan on deep diving into. And I'm starting with some of his Oklahoma tape before I get into some of his USC tape to see the progression from 2021 to 22 and then see how he looked in 22 entering the 23 season. But It's interesting to me, right? I'm a huge NFL fan, right? It's what we do here on TDN Daily, but I love college football. I love the idea of sitting down on a Saturday and just bouncing around between games and just watching all these games and having a conversation. You guys know Mid-Major Chris. I love watching the smaller schools. It's what I love to do. And so we are going to bring that flavor to TDN Daily as this show has sort of evolved from what it was originally. And so looking forward to what a college football season looks like for this show and what kind of content we are able to put together. But that's the list. And I didn't probably mention all the guys that are going to be in the mix at different schools throughout the course of the season. I'm scrolling through the list just to see some names, and like Keaton Slovis at BYU, JT Daniels now at Rice, Emory Jones at Cincinnati. I'm just looking at all of these guys that came in at different schools and have now transferred, and they're on this list. There are some fun names here that we're going to get to watch throughout the course of the season, and not just from a draft lens, but from a college football lens as well. Okay, we've got some listener suggestions, some live YouTube chat topics that I want to get into here for the second half of the show, and I'll hit Sportsnut with the one that he asked at the beginning. Which team will have a better record next season, the Jets or the Giants? And look, I think on the surface, I want to say the Jets. I think the Giants, obviously, overplayed where we think they are from a talent perspective. And I think the schedule for the Giants, because of how well they played last year, is something that is is worrying, right, from being able to predict them to win a lot of games. I look at their schedule. I'm not going to read it in order, but I'm just going to point out games that are, troublesome to me. They have to go on the road to play San Francisco. They have to go to Miami. They have to go to Buffalo. They have to play the Jets. We already know they got to play the Eagles twice. They got to play the Cowboys twice. They have to go to New Orleans, which should not be a relatively easy matchup for them. So I worry about finding enough really truly winnable games where I think the Giants will be favored in their matchups. I mean, they get Seattle at home. That's still going to be a tough matchup. They get to play Washington twice. I think they're much better than Washington. I think winning both of those games is very on the table. They host New England. I think they're better than New England. I think they can beat New England. They host Green Bay after their bye in Week 14. I have no idea what Green Bay is going to be, but you would think that is a winnable game. They get the Rams late in the season. Who knows what the Rams are going to look like that late? So again, I think there are a lot of tough matchups. We'll just count them. At San Francisco, at Miami, at Buffalo, home against the Jets, the 2 games against Philadelphia, and at New Orleans. That's 7 games that I think are going to be uphill battles for the New York Giants. Doesn't mean they can't win them. I just think they're going to be uphill battles, and I don't know if they're going to be favored in any of those games. When you look at the Jets, I think what's going to help the Jets is the second half of their schedule, because the early part, the first 6 games, if they can get out of that at 3-3, at worst 4-2 potentially, they're off to the races. Their opening schedule, for maybe those who don't know: home against Buffalo, at Dallas, home against New England and Kansas City, at Denver, home against Philadelphia. So a tough draw, but if you can beat Dallas, New England, and Denver, the 3 games that I think you're going to be the 3 games that I think are most likely for you to be favored in and have a chance to win. If you can win those 3, at worst you're going to be 3-3. I think you have a chance against Buffalo in Week 1 on Monday night. You get to 4-2 coming out of the bye. They've got a nice schedule at the end of November into December. From Week 12 on, home against Miami, home against Atlanta, home against Houston, at Miami, home against Washington, at Cleveland, at New England. In that stretch, I don't know if outside of maybe the game at Miami and the game Thursday night against Cleveland, depending on where Cleveland is and where the Jets are at that point, they're going to be favored in almost every one of those games down the stretch. That's important. And so to me, I think if they can get out of that first stretch at 3-3, they're set up after their bye week in Week 7 to go on a run. So if I had to guess, I would say the Jets have a better record next year than the Giants, and that's assuming health for Aaron Rodgers. That's assuming health across the board in a lot of ways. But right now, as I sit here, for me, it's very clear that I think the New York Jets will have a better record than the New York Giants. Tuttle, even before the draft results, is it wrong to think the Falcons can quickly find better success than the Commanders, given they have similar quarterback situations? Current division strength bias, perhaps. I think it's a very fair question, Tuttle. And when I look at this, I think the quarterback situations are extremely similar. They took quarterbacks in the same draft class. They both took late flyers on quarterbacks. They're both starting those quarterbacks in year 2. Really, truly, these guys' first opportunities to start. I know Desmond got a couple of games down the stretch. Sam got the last start of the year for Washington, but they're still both relatively unknown at the position. And so to me, I would call that a toss-up, right? We don't know what Sam Howell is. We don't know what Desmond Ridder is. I thought Desmond showed enough flashes in those last couple of games to feel like he's not going to actively hurt you, but we'll call them even. We'll call them both unknowns. We'll call them toss-ups. The division's going to help the Falcons, right? The Commanders have to play the Giants twice, like we just mentioned. They have to play the Eagles twice. They have to play the Cowboys twice. I don't think they're going to be favored in any one of those games. Any of those 6 games, I don't think the Commanders are going to be favored unless they just start out so strong and Sam Howell looks so good that the books and the odds change on that throughout the season. So then we look at the rest of the roster. Well, I think the Falcons are building a much better offense. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. They bring in Jonnu Smith via a trade in ahead of free agency to start this year. I love what they're building. You got Terry McLaurin there in Washington. You got Brian Robinson Jr. to run the football. I just like the Falcons group a lot better. And the fact that they're going to get to play the Carolina Panthers twice, who I know Bryce Young, everyone's very excited about that, but it's still a relatively unknown. It's the first year of a coaching staff. I think the coaching matchup goes to Carolina there. But again, I think the Falcons are a team that's further along in their cycle than the Panthers are. So you like those opportunities. You like the 2 opportunities against Tampa with Kyle Trask and or Baker Mayfield starting. The Saints, you're going to be able to be competitive with the Saints. You always have been, but you think the Saints would probably be able to win, at worst, split those games. The division certainly helps Atlanta in that regard. So just from that perspective, I would agree with you 100%. Tuttle, that I feel that the Commanders are certainly behind the eight ball when it comes to the Falcons if we were comparing just those two teams. And they are very similar in where they're at. I think we look at both coaches as being coaches we could consider being on the hot seat, that it's a make or break year for them. They have to show really great improvement. And didn't the Falcons win 7 games last year and exceeded expectations that a lot of people had? And so that's tough. You won 7 games, you exceeded expectations, yet it's kind of a make or break year, and I don't know how much more wiggle room there is. Can you get to 8? Can you get to 9? That feels a little rich. Haven't really done a deep dive into the Falcons' schedule. We'll do it here right now. Let's look at it. I'm pulling them up. But they finished second in the division last year at 7-10, almost won it. Washington feels stagnant to me, says Tuttle. Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, the Atlanta schedule, we'll do it very quickly. Home against Carolina, home against Green Bay. All right, 2 home games to start the year. At Jacksonville, or at Detroit. Home against Jacksonville, but that's a London game, is it not? Yeah, that's a game in London. They play Houston. They should be favored in that game. They play Washington. They should be favored in that game. They go to Tampa. I think they've got a good chance there. They go to Tennessee. I think they've got a good chance there. Home against Minnesota. That's probably a tough one. They go to Arizona. They could win that game. Out of the bye, New Orleans, not going to pick them. At New York, not going to pick them. Would pick them against Tampa. I think Carolina, if you want to split. They get Indy, Chicago late in the season. Yeah, I mean, they've got a pretty good schedule. That could be pretty good for them. That could put them in a position to where they can win more games than they did a year ago, and I think they'll be better than Washington. Again, their division certainly helps. Sportsnut asks, does Will Levis start in Tennessee this year? And if so, what happens to Tannehill? The Tennessee Titans quarterback room and quarterback circus, revolving door, is one of those underrated storylines that I think we all should be keeping an eye on. Again, I don't think it's going to translate to a lot of wins and or losses for the Tennessee Titans. I think it's all kind of baked into what we think of them as a team for 2023. But it is something that I'm certainly going to keep an eye on. The fact that Tannehill remains on the roster to me, Sportsnut, makes me think that they're going to give this a go to try to be competitive. Now, you can look at that wide receiver room and say, how is that kind of group going to be competitive? But we know how they like to play. They like to run the football. They're not going to ask Tannehill to do a lot. If Tannehill can stay healthy, we've seen in recent years, he can do enough to help them win games. And they're going to get to play Houston twice. They're going to get to play Indy twice. So those are 4 games right there where if they are competitive, they can win those games. So to me, I think Tannehill will start the year as the starting quarterback, and Will Levis will be the backup quarterback there in Tennessee. But if Tannehill gets hurt, if Tannehill struggles, if the team overall starts to slip throughout the course of the season, I think Levis will take over at some point so that they can get a full runway of being able to evaluate the guy that they took in the second round. They did trade up to go get him, so they feel pretty confident in him, but you probably want to give him a runway, a la Desmond Ridder. You want to give him an opportunity. Where's Tennessee's bye? Because that might be a really good indication of when we might get Will Levis in there for the Tennessee Titans. So I'm looking at the schedule. So their bye's in week 7. So they play their first six games, and this is a schedule that could very, very quickly turn into Will Levis starting. And I love it when a narrative comes together exactly the way that I planned it, even though I didn't look at this ahead of time. First 6 games for the Tennessee Titans, and the chat can tell me where they think Tennessee's going to be after these 6 games. At New Orleans, home against the Chargers, at Cleveland, home against Cincinnati, at Indy, against Baltimore. They could very realistically be, and that week 6 game is a international game, I believe. They could very realistically be 1-5 going into their bye week. 2-4 maybe at best. And I think the 2 games you would look at are Cleveland and Indy as 2 games that they can win. They could be 2-4, 1-5. And if they're 1-5 going into the bye week, home against Atlanta in week 8, that feels like a nice opportunity to start Will Levis. If you're looking for a nice soft spot to circle on the calendar to play Will Levis, to start him. So I think how Tennessee does through the first 6 weeks of the season. Again, I'm assuming Tannehill, right? I'm assuming Tannehill starts the year. But if they go 1-5 or 2-4, I think some very strong consideration will be made for Will Levis coming out of the bye in week 8 against Atlanta. Heldy, what is one player we all have who we think is poised for a breakout this year? My pick is Jelani Woods for Indy. Ooh, not a question I've even remotely considered. Maybe we do and I know I do this all the time, maybe we do a breakout candidate for all 32 teams show in the future. Maybe that's something that we do, so I can pick one for all 32 teams. But gut reaction, I'm assuming it's not a rookie player. You want somebody that's kind of established that you think is gonna break out. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that immediately jumps off the page to me. Let me look at the teams. Let me look at the team logos and see somebody that I think is going to really emerge for any of these teams. I'm just scanning. I'm not going to pick anybody in the AFC East. Picking anybody in the AFC South. No, not really. The AFC West. No. I'm just trying to think. Jamari Sallier for the Chargers or George Pickens for the Steelers. Heldy says maybe put this on ice for a league-wide breakout show. All right. I've convinced everybody. We'll do the show next week, and I'll try to go through and pick one breakout candidate for all 32 teams. Because nobody immediately jumped to mind, but my brain hasn't been thinking about that, so that's why nobody immediately jumps to mind. But we will definitely do that show next week. I will make that a promise right now. That'll be one of the shows that we sneak in throughout the show next week. Appreciate you all being here. Appreciate everybody being a part of the Friday Free for All, the show where we pass the producer's mic over to you guys and you drive the show with topics and with conversation. It is always appreciated. Everybody in the YouTube chat hanging out with us, giving us topics. For those of you in the podcast feed, would appreciate it if you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. We greatly do appreciate a lot of momentum building. I've already heard about some of the show topics next week. We got a lot of fun stuff for the summer plan. So rate, review, subscribe. You're going to want to share the show with a friend. You're going to want to be a part of this journey with us as we grow and we get into the 2024 draft cycle and into the 2023 college and NFL seasons. We've got a lot of fun things planned. So appreciate everybody making this show a part of their day. Hope everybody has a good weekend. We'll see y'all on Monday. All right, Sportsnet, I see your question. I was doing the outro when you said it, so we'll sneak it in here into the post show, and I can hang out for a little bit for the post show. I'm not in a major rush to get out of here. Sportsnet, which rookie wide receiver has the biggest season this year? Which rookie wide receiver has the biggest season this year? Oh, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs, Jordan Addison's probably primed for a really good role if they're going to double Justin Jefferson. I would say those would be the three. I think JSN's going to have a small role early. Quentin Johnston is, they've got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I know those guys aren't the epitome of health, so if somebody gets hurt, there's going to be an opportunity. But he's probably drawing in as a third option early. So I would go someplace else. Addison's going to be wide receiver 2. I think Zay's going to be wide receiver 1 very, very quickly, if not right away in Baltimore. So, yeah, I would go Zay, Addison, or Josh Downs would be the 3 for me. That could have the biggest season this year. Downs could end up putting up really solid numbers in the slot for Indy. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they deploy that offense. And how, I'm assuming Richardson's starting. Minshew's there as well, right? I don't think Minshew Mania is starting the year. I think they'll probably give it to Richardson. So if that connection, if that chemistry can develop early, 2 rookies working together each and every day, I certainly could see it being a scenario where they have a connection early and he could put up some big numbers. We haven't gotten to them yet. We haven't gotten to the Colts in prospects and props rookie of the year candidates, but they have 5 guys that I would consider for that spot. They're going to have a lot of guys that are going to have some good odds, but also some good value as well. Anything else that we want to discuss here before I get out of here on a Friday? I said I could stick around, but if there isn't anything else, I will get out of here and get this podcast posted to the podcast feed. So I'll make this the last call for anything that you guys might have to close out the week. We'll probably do the breakout candidate show on Monday. I don't have anything tentatively planned for Monday as of this moment. So we'll probably do that show on Monday, and then we'll go from there about what the rest of the week looks like. But yeah, that certainly seems like the plan. So I appreciate everybody being here all week long. I know Heldy, you're in here pretty regularly every day. Tuttle, Sportsnut, Sam, everybody. Appreciate you all being the core audience here as we continue to grow this thing. So, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell people that you think would enjoy the show. We want to continue to grow this community to where, we're doing this, and the entire show is just back and forth between you guys, and I'm just here kind of moderating it and, bringing in what you guys say. into the show and build a community and have a conversation. So appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate all the diehards that are here each and every day. Hope you all have a great weekend. Should be a different background, different setup on Monday. Hopefully, if you see me back here doing the show, it means something's gone terribly wrong in my move over the weekend. So appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate everybody sticking around and enjoying the show. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to everybody tomorrow, or everybody on Monday.